You're listening to the Microsoft Innovation Podcast, where we explore the intersection of people, business, and technology. This year, we're adding a new show to our lineup, The AI Advantage, to help you learn the skills you need to thrive in the AI era.
Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope today's guest inspires and educates you on the possibilities of the Microsoft Power Platform. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from New York in the United States. He is the CEO of Shelf. He's a 3-times founder and current chairman of the board of artificial intelligence and knowledge management company Shelf, which serves as an unstructured data management platform for both LLMs and people. He's previously served as a US Peace Corps volunteer and mentor at the Founders Institute. You can find links to his bio and socials in the show notes for this episode. Welcome to the show, Sed.
Thanks, Mark. Really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the show. You got it, and I find that the tech that you're in is incredibly interesting. I'm just on the nexus of starting a new podcast show, which is actually totally just focused on AI in the massive growth we've seen in the last 24 months in this space. But before we get into that discussion, tell me a bit about food, family, and fun. What do they mean to you?
Well, outside of work, there's really just family. And the more family, travel, and adventure could line up to be one great trip, the happier I am outside of work. So I've traveled all over the world, almost 100 countries clocked. I've done many different types of adventures, love anything outdoors, mountaineering, scuba diving, skydiving, whatever, boating, anything you can think of. I'll do it. I'll try it. I just love adventure. So that's kind of a bit. And I'm trying to get my daughters and son as much into it as possible so that we can just continue the good times outside of work.
Amazing. I'm coming up on 50 countries, so you're double me. That's incredibly impressive. How do you select a new country?
Well, most of my countries were clocked through backpacking. So I would just work as a consultant, which you'll get into a bit. So I worked as a consultant, and then I would take 6 months off, 9 months off, and I would backpack through a region: South America, Central America, Africa, Southeast Asia, Europe, Australia. And I would just spend time just literally bus from station to station, checking out, exploring different regions and different museums and different national parks and all sorts of stuff. So now I kind of selected on family friendliness. That was not the case. I would usually choose the most dangerous place I could possibly find when I was younger. Now it's the safest, most family friendly place. And we're going to be heading to the Yucatan of Mexico in about a month. So yeah, there's a lot of fun things for the kiddos there.
What story comes to mind when you think of someone says, tell me something about your travel experience that really stands out or highlight or location? Is something just the first thing that pops to your mind?
Oh my goodness. There wouldn't be one. So it's some people ask me, well, what's your favorite country? And I always answer for what type of experience are you looking? Is it for like outdoors? Is it for wildlife? Is it for culture? Is it for food? So I'll answer your question from the perspective of food, because that was the answer that I didn't give you. And just as a transparency's sake, I am Italian by nature, from my family and whatnot. So Italy, the food in Italy, I've been to Italy, I don't know, a dozen plus times. My family's from Napoli. So it's very hard to get a bad meal outside of the central areas in Venice and Florence, Rome. But if you go out on the periphery, oh my goodness, it's so hard to get a bad meal. So yeah, I mean, I guess from the perspective of food, go to Italy, go to the Amalfi Coast in summer when the fish is fresh and you can get the frutti mare.
Nice.
Go into the Piedmont region and get the Barolos and the Brunellos and all that, and you'll be guaranteed to have a really good trip.
So good. It's my wife and I's favorite country as well. I went there last year. I'm going again this year.
Where do you go? Where are you going this coming year?
Specifically, I'm going into Venice because I am then going over to Slovenia to speak at a conference. And so hence going via Venice.
That's smart. You're going to fly into Verona?
Yeah. So actually, no, we're flying directly into Venice.
Okay, that little air.
Yeah,
It's kind of halfway between Venice and Verona, but
yeah. Because we're coming from the bottom of the world, we've got one stopover in Qatar, I think it is, and Qatar has a direct flight to Venice. So
it's awesome. Have you been to Verona by any chance?
Yes, I have.
That is an awesome city. Most people don't know about it. Incredible city. It does not get its due credit. Really incredible food as well, and the home of Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. And the Colosseum is, still fully intact there, right? And of course,
the best one I've seen anywhere, actually.
Yeah.
Even better than one in Rome, I think, because the one in Rome is, it's been kind of taken apart by different power fractions over the last 2,000 years, and it's not what it used to be. But the one in Verona kind of looks the way it looked.
Exactly. No, beautiful city. Is probably, in fact, I think it was the first town we went into in Italy when we were traveling in 2017. So, yeah.
That's a good intro because it's also small and you can walk the whole thing.
Totally. And I mean, it has its links to so many different things with Shakespeare and one of the other ones. There's a famous statue of the guy that talks about the 7 levels of hell or something. Some famous
Dante.
philosopher. Yeah, Dante. Yeah.
Dante. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a square. There's a Dante square there.
Everywhere you go in Italy, it's just some type of history. You're just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, amazing.
I feel so dumb.
So true, right? The history is just phenomenal. Tell me a bit about your career in tech. How did it come about? How did you get to where you are? And you've got a few companies under your belt. Give us the snapshot of that.
Well, in your intro, you kind of teed this up for me. It all started when I was actually in the Peace Corps. I kind of worked as a knowledge manager because my service was in a think tank. So I was working on a think tank. We were doing research on ICT trends for the government. And I was given the task that nobody else wanted, which was essentially organizing all the research. A very, difficult spot to be for any knowledge manager out there. I'm sure you can appreciate it, how unfun it is organizing other people's mess all the time. So anyway, did that for a period of time and got pretty good at it. And then when and this also ties to your first question, when I got out of the Peace Corps, I started doing knowledge management consulting. And I did consulting gigs for MIT and Harvard and Stanford University. It's a societal organizational learning, and Boston College and World Bank, and just did a lot of really incredible projects. We're just trying to organize, trying to get our heads around a particular domain, so a particular problem in the organization that they wanted to have greater transparency, greater understanding of the key decisions made, best practices, lessons learned, key strategies, and extracting that out and providing a way for people to access it in real time and preventing their most important and valuable learning to essentially disappear into the vapor of time. So I built my domain expertise in that, and then tech was forced upon me. Because when you start doing this in the age when everything's digitalizing and everything's going to the cloud, you're kind of forced to adapt. And that's when I got into the kind of the software side of things. And I taught myself to code and learned how to build platforms and learned how to customize SharePoint. And that was the beginning of my really long-standing relationship with Microsoft, where learn to customize the SharePoint instance for different knowledge management initiatives in large organizations. And that was kind of the second company I started, which was a services company around knowledge management for like Fortune 500 companies, enabling them to have a knowledge strategy on SharePoint. So SharePoint's just a technology. You still need people and processes, and that's what I help provide. So that's how I got into tech. So hopefully I answered your question there.
Yeah. So obviously, as things have progressed, you've got into the space of artificial intelligence and its effect on knowledge management, which I've found almost stunning over the last 2 years, is that, 7-8 years ago, I would be presenting at events talking about the 4 megatrends that were going to change the world from a tech perspective. And one of them was data, and our production of data would increase to such a phenomenal rate. And I feel that for the last 5-10 years, companies have got really good at collecting data and no idea around how to orchestrate that, extract value from it, de-risk it, and then along comes generative AI. We run that over it, and all of a sudden, patterns in that data start to appear. PII information that has been on the networks for years is now all exposed, and companies. I heard an interesting story recently of a company, it was a Fortune 500 company, considering AI, and their concern from IT was that they said, we know our data is bad, and what AI is going to do is expose how bad our data is. And so, I consider that security by obscurity, right? Nobody knows how to find it. It's unsecure, but because nobody knows how to find it, we take some comfort in that, which is crazy, really, right? So, especially from a cybercrime perspective, and this concept of a walled garden, and that as long as people can't get in, we're safe. And of course, it's not the case. So what are you finding in this whole area of, SharePoint is often the repository of unstructured data inside an organization. What are you finding the challenges that companies are now coming across as they go, you know what, we want to step into this area of AI. We know we're going to get there's a lot of fear of missing out, right? Of our competitors are going to get the jump on us and whatever technology area business area they're in. How do you have those conversations with these type of organizations to bring about clarity and then move forward with their data story and then ultimately their AI story off the back of that?
It's interesting because there is a element of education. Mark, you seem to be very educated on the problem. A lot of organizations are not. Essentially, what we find is that it's a crawl, walk, run approach to any type of transformation, organizational transformation. If you try to skip steps, you usually end up in a bit of trouble. So what we saw in 2024 was it was a year of POVs, proof of concept, proof of value. Organizations were just trying to get something stood up, trying to play around with the technology, try to poke at it, find out where its weaknesses were. And one of the main things that came out of that period, that experimental period, was, I think, an awareness, at least from Gartner's perspective, awareness that the data is a real issue. Gartner identified it as the number one issue preventing GenAI at scale. So first, it's an acknowledging that there is a data issue. And I'd like to just quickly take a step back on the data issue, because it's easy to get caught up in these big words or short words if it's data, but it usually doesn't mean anything. So I'd like to just ground it on what it actually means from the standpoint of knowledge from unstructured data, another word that usually doesn't mean much to people, and trying to ground it on something that's practical and interactable. And that is, what is unstructured data? So we as humans, every day, we are, in our professional lives, we are producing materials. We are turning thoughts into things. We are typing out reports and creating material documents, and we're creating presentations and forecasts and reports. And that is the output of our day in, day out, week in, week out, so forth and so on. And because we are human and we do always make mistakes, it's just part of who we are, is we're constantly learning and constantly growing and constantly getting better. But through that process, we're making mistakes. And those mistakes are in those documents. There's multiple versions of a document that shouldn't have them. They're saved in the wrong folder. A section of a document wasn't updated. A presentation has an old slide. A price wasn't updated. Whatever. Anywhere, any department, any use case, people are just, by their very nature, making these very small, tiny mistakes. And those tiny mistakes are getting saved in OneDrive, in SharePoint, Google Drive, and everywhere. They're getting saved wherever people work. And now the issue is, so I think we can all agree that at the current state, AI is not sentient. It is not artificial general intelligence. It isn't able to govern countries and run businesses and so forth. It's not there. So since it can't think like a human, how can it possibly identify human mistakes? So with these mistakes in the data, the data is the fuel of AI. So it's like asking the car to analyze the gas. It's a different technology. It has a different source. It runs through different processes. And you can't combine them and just assume it's the same. They're not. They're completely distinct things. One is fuel and the other is the engine. And GenAI is the engine, and what it needs is clean fuel. And that fuel that it's being given from the perspective I've just shared is that unstructured data, which is the summary of all the documents that an organization has created. And having all those micro errors in those documents, and then asking the machine to just know which ones are right, which is the right version, what is the right section that had something wasn't updated, what is the correct price. That is something that a human needs to fix. And if you don't have the human fix it, then you have this issue that we've seen in the news about hallucinations and about issues of accuracy and so forth. But a lot of it is sourced around the data. So my advice is answering your question is, if you want the engine to run efficiently and you want it to go far, you definitely need to have a data strategy, not just an AI strategy. They're two different strategies. And they need to be run by different people, but very well coordinated and organized. And we're seeing that organizations that are succeeding and getting their GenAI projects off the ground are doing exactly that.
So let's talk about that data strategy. Do you see any patterns of good data strategy surface?
Oh, for sure. Thankfully, they have emerged. So first of all, the biggest mistake, I'll start with the mistake. So best practice, as a background in knowledge management, best practices, lessons learned, key strategies. Let's start with lessons learned. Trying to do everything all at once is a really bad idea. So there was a survey by Virtual Business Intelligence that GenAI 2025 Outlook, and it essentially said that the vast majority of data, organizations know the vast majority of data is unstructured, and that the average organization has 10 million files. 10 million average. So imagine that's the average size company. That's a 500 to 1,000 person organization. Imagine what a 10,000, 100,000 person organization has. 10 million files. So trying to boil the ocean, so to speak, never works. So you need to focus on, so the first thing that you need to do is not do that, not boil the ocean, focus on a specific use case. And around that specific use case, there are specific documents and files, unstructured data that will be relevant and important. And that's your first task. It's an elimination task. So you want to reduce the total number of data that you're looking at and identify what is the right pools of data that you want to start fixing, improving, managing. So that would be the first step. The next step is you need to enrich it. So it's an enhancement layer. So now that you've reduced 1 million files down to, let's say, 5,000 files, the next thing you would want to do is you want to add context around it. You want to add metadata. You want to enable all of that unstructured data, all those documents to be compared apples to apples. Because if they aren't all filled out with the similar types of metadata around an ontological structure, you're going to be comparing apples to oranges, and then you can't refine it, which is the most important stage, which is the last one. So you want to go through a process of enrichment. You want to enrich it as much as possible, and there's tools for that. And then once you've got your 5,000 files, you've reduced it to 5,000 from 10 million. Now you've enriched it. Now it's the refinement stage, and now you can take that 5,000 and probably bring it down to like 1,500 files that really matter, that are accurate, up to date, and trusted, and then connect it to your GenAI. And then that final stage of it is to obviously monitor and continuously improve, because you're not going to get it right out of the gate. You're going to get it right by iterating, by constantly focusing on it. And if you do that, you will succeed eventually. You will succeed, and you will have a successful use case that you could then start thinking about scaling.
So in that scenario, do you need human curators that are let's say you've gone through those 3 stages, that then maintain that? Like, let's give you an example that I've had in the last year or so. A bank, they have a sample where somebody comes in to the bank branch and the person says, what's the latest term deposit rate? And when they search for that, let's say on their SharePoint system, there's 400 documents of the latest term rate, because each time it's updated, new documents produced. And you talked about that metadata, the context of, but what's today's date? What's the most recent one? Blah, blah, blah. So that bank spends $3 million a year on an internal contact center so that person can pick up a phone and say, what's the term rate for today? And of course, they're wanting AI to solve that for them and have a person at that teller machine to be able to get the full metadata context of location. I'm in a bank branch, I've got a customer in front of me, it's today's date, and I'm talking about the 5-year term deposit rate. Does that mean that a human needs, if you've distilled down to that 500 odd documents, as you said, needs to then go, but that one's old, that one's new, or are you looking at tech to do that?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we do. So you can do it manually. It's very painful. You're not going to get it right because the volumes is too great. It's not something that a human brain can process, looking at 400 documents and going through and figuring out exactly what area of it is right and not right. It's not efficient. So that goes into that enhance and refine step. So again, it's reduce. So you gave a perfect example. It's been already reduced to 400. So this particular use case has been reduced to 400. It's 400 documents. Now you're enhancing it. So exactly what you said, automatically adding the metadata. You do not want humans adding metadata to that many files. You will waste a lot of time and money. You could do that automatically, also using AI. So it automatically generates and standardizes the data, the unstructured data on a metadata layer. And then it's a refinement algorithm. So now you have a whole bunch of algorithms looking at different heuristics of measurement and comparison, conflicting sections, similar sections, inaccurate, out of date. Other things that you could have heuristics around are context, the topics that is relevant, the location that is relevant. And you could essentially have a dashboard on top of those 400 documents and just saying, here are the 5 that are most likely correct for this specific use case. Do you want to filter out the other 395? Yes, boom. Okay, now look at 5 instead of 395 and identify the exact right one for this specific use case. Attribute a specific topic, a specific geography, exactly what you were saying, timestamp, whatnot, when you want AI to pull this particular document. Because usually when you go from 400 to 5, usually those 5 or 10 or 15 are all correct. They're all correct under different use cases and different scenarios for different locations. And you don't want to filter them out. What you want to do is you want to provide that metadata layer that is providing context for the GenAI in order to properly retrieve it. So when the retrieval augmented generation technology gets kicked in, you have this layer, this intermediary layer that's sitting between your unstructured data and the LLM. And that's the key thing that we provide is we provide an automated view of your unstructured data that enables you to seamlessly manage that very, very manual, difficult process if we didn't exist.
So just to jump into a bit of the tech detail there, are we talking about just SharePoint datasets? And then how does that feed into the Microsoft Graph? Or are you talking about dedicated, copilots, if you're to use Microsoft's term, that you are building out and therefore has its own interface independent of, M365 Copilot? How does, I take it, what you do with Shelf allows for to a large degree, an automation of this area?
Yeah, so it's fun. I'm going to use these terms again. It's crawl, walk, run. So Microsoft has out-of-the-box Copilot for 365. So okay, great. You have an out-of-the-box Copilot. Get started there. You're going to run into its limitations. Then they have the AI Copilot Studio. So then that gives you a little bit more customization, a little bit more power to control your outputs. And it gets you so far, but you'll also run into limitations. And then you get down to the deep layer, which is when you really want to scale the AI, and that's the AI Foundry. And that's where you have full control. And that's where we plug into all three of those, right? So we can help clean the data before it gets into the Microsoft 365 use cases, teams, whatever. But you're not going to be able to provide that context layer that I shared with you. Because we can provide the context, but there is no customization on the LLM side, on the receiving side of it to interpret it. So we'll be able to eliminate that going through that process, reduce, enhance, refine. You'll be able to reduce a whole bunch and get better samples of data or better data sets, but you're not going to be able to refine it and get it really dialed in until you start. The Copilot Studio will get better, but then you really have full customization and control at that AI Foundry level, where you can really receive, you can customize how the data is received and how that context is interpreted, and then control the outputs of your copilots.
But you're only talking about the second part of that equation, right? Because what you started with is that, and let's take Copilot Studio as an example. I can point it at a data set and go, there you go, I've given it the data. And I've given it those 10 million documents, right? And go, hey, I've given it the data. And wonder why it hallucinates, as you say, all those errors, micro errors that have been entered in over time. So does your tool only work on that second layer, or do you also look closely at, let's back up a bit and say, what's the data source you're pointing your AI at? We got to do a whole bunch of work there first before you can actually start using it in your AI models.
Are you talking about the structured data, Mark?
As in getting your data into a format that you're down to, you like the 5 documents rather than the 10 million, that you start with. Because what I see is I see consultants, they go, hey, I know Copilot Studio, I've worked with its predecessor, Power Virtual Agents, and to do a RAG process, all I need to do is point it at a data set. And they don't do the critical thinking around, hang on a second, is this data set the data set that we should, am I pointing it to the ocean, or am I pointing it to a really refined set of data that's going to give me amazingly crisp results, and everyone's going to go, wow, this is magic, not realizing that, well, the magic was actually refining the data that we were looking at to start with. Are you on the data side, I suppose I'm asking, as well as the integration to the Microsoft ecosystem from an AI perspective?
So we're definitely on the data side, and we are also in integration into the Microsoft ecosystem. And I guess one other thing that will be helpful here is we're also able to process the outputs of the Copilot, so the answers that are coming out. And we're able to also look at those. I think that's critical. That's the continuously improving and iterating, is understand what. So you've cleaned the data. You're like, okay, great. We think that this is that we have everything handled, and then out comes bad answers. Out comes you went from 74% accuracy, maybe you went up to 82, and you're like, wow, that's awesome. We're at 82, pretty happy with that. But you could keep going. You just need to know what are the answers being produced, and then being able to source which ones of those answers are actually due to bad data, due to the wrong documents, or having the wrong context around those documents, so that the LLMs aren't able to properly interpret them and produce the correct response. So we do the data full on. Mm-hmm. So we'll help, but we don't store anything. Like no. We're not storing the data. We're just a processing layer on the data. And then we provide that interface to enable a constant monitoring it. And then again, that interface to connect it to either Microsoft 365, Copilot Studio, or AI Foundry. And again, it's like a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid, it's the most powerful stuff for the organization to get into, but they probably want to start at the top, or maybe they've already played around with the 365 and they're ready to go to Copilot. But yeah, we integrate with all three of those.
I like it. We'll put links, of course, in the show notes to your tooling here. I think it's critically important. Tell me about 2025. We're recording this in January 2025. We've seen the hype around AI agents, and so we're going to get to much more, rather than just a question-answer type scenario or conversational AI. We're going into a action or agentic AI. there's a big difference between the marketing and the reality of these things, and what is, so much of what I'm seeing as agentic AI is automation, right? It's old traditional automation. It's a rule-based if-then type scenario. I'm not seeing the AI taking its own initiative around memory, self-healing, correcting itself, learning from patterns of behavior, which is what I see as a utopia of agentic AI. Give it an instruction and it will work out what it knows, what it doesn't know, what it needs more information on, etc. That's one area of big prediction for 2025. I don't know if we'll achieve it in 2025 to the level that the marketing is telling us that we will. And this can be from Google, this could be from OpenAI, this could be from Anthropic and Microsoft, any of them in the space, Llama from Meta. But tell me, what do you, in the knowledge that you've collected over the time in the space, what do you think is going to be a defining thing of 2025 in an AI's perspective?
It's very interesting because the exact same problems that we just went over with more of a RAG-based use case are going to be the same for an agentic use case. If the data is bad, if you haven't cleaned and you haven't quality controlled what is going in, then you're going to have garbage coming out. So I think if we rolled back the clock to January of 2024, I think a lot of people, pundits, would have been saying in January 24 that we probably would have been further along collectively by January 25 than we actually were. And it's a normal learning curve. Everything's a bell curve, right?
Yeah.
So there's this experimentation. There's this adaptation. It's this figuring out what mistakes you've made and then correcting it and then trying again until you get it right. I think I'll take a quick step back and just have a larger trend, and then I'll answer the specific trend on agents, because I think agents are critical. The larger trend is we're going through one of the great transformations in our civilization's history with AI. This is not an internet bubble. This isn't going away. There may be several years where things are not progressing as quickly, where promises are not being made because they were a bit too optimistic in the very beginning. But the trend of automating more and more work and using artificial intelligence to do so is here to stay, and it is truly societally transformational in every regard. So if that's the case, agents is really the means for the vast majority of the transformation, because agents at the end of the day are doing, I like to think of agents as job descriptions. So if you just look at any job description inside of your organization, maybe not the one that you would post online, but the real job description of everything a person is doing for a specific role, and you've listed 100 things. So the agents maybe in 2025 will be able to do 3 of those 100 things. It can do the simple things, crawl, walk, run again. But every year that goes by, it's going to be able to take a greater and greater percentage of that job description and be able to automate more and more. I can see that with knowledge management as a function. We have an agentic framework. We have over 100 agents right now. We'll have 500 agent algorithms by the end of this year and thousands after that. I can already see how it's augmenting the knowledge manager. It's augmenting the human work and reducing kind of the manual failure-based work that's extremely data-based, which you just can't see what you can't see. And then obviously for the knowledge management industry, that is, it's an accelerator to their function. Now, in 2025, is it going to be noticeable? That's the question. I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows how noticeable it's going to be. I think generally the trend is it going to be 3%, 2%, 1% of a particular job function? Which job functions? Obviously, some job functions like a call center agent is a higher percentage of the tasks can be automated. So maybe that's like 15%. Maybe you can have a agentic framework enabling all of the write-ups of the tickets and the call summaries and the tagging and the organization and the next steps. Like maybe it does a lot of that, and it's very impactful in that particular use case. And then there's other use cases, like I said, like marketing, product marketing. Maybe it's like 3% for product marketing. Maybe it's 1% for SDR or 2% for an SDR. I don't know. But the overall trend is it will be a greater and greater percentage for more and more job roles every year that goes by. Where it is at a particular day and time, I don't think anyone knows. And if they say they know, maybe you should weigh that perspective a bit. But the general trend of where it's going is kind of defined.
Yeah, totally agreed. Sid, it's been awesome having you on the show. Before I let you go, is there anything you would like to close with?
I would just say that we've talked about the issues with data. We've talked about the issues of hallucinations. I've used that crawl, walk, run methodology a bunch of times here. I would just say, regardless of whether you're using our technology or not, Shelf, really focusing on your use case, on what you want to solve in 2025, and rank ordering those use cases and saying, here's 15, 20 use cases that we want to solve, but this is the one that we can solve. This is the one where the data isn't so great. It's only 1,000 files or whatnot, and not 10,000. But identifying that use case and getting that right from the beginning is the greatest probability of success. And then using a technology like Shelf to automate as much of that process of the cleanup, enhancement, elimination of the bad data and the monitoring really sets up any organization for a higher success, more automation, more momentum and competitiveness in 2025. So I would just say, focus on the data. You get the data right, you'll get the answers right. You get the answers right, you'll be able to automate more and more and differentiate and be more successful in the market.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Stay safe out there and shoot for the stars.
Are you ready to accelerate your career in the Microsoft ecosystem? The 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, created by Mark Smith, is your opportunity to create a personalized pathway to success. Join over 1,200 alumni from more than 70 countries who have achieved remarkable results, from promotions to new job opportunities. Take it from Nathan, who said, since completing the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, I've become an MVP in business applications and doubled my income. Or from Parvez, who shares, I've never felt as inspired or energized about my career as I do now. Sign up at arcor.nz365guy.com. You can find the link in the show notes. And if you use the code podcast, you'll get 10% off.